All right. Once again, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to everyone from wherever you may be watching. Thank you for joining and Happy New Year to each and every one. Thank you so much for joining us today and as we celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I am the dream, breathing life into the words of Dr. King. My name is George Harrison, and I have the honor of serving as Chief Program Officer on the National Board of the Network Black Integrated Communications Professionals Employee Group here at AT&T. Today, we are also joined by our Chief Executive Officer of the network, Gina McCrae, who has a message for us to share. Madam CEO, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you guys so much for joining us from wherever it is that you are. We know that you had many things that you could have done today, so we are appreciative that you chose to join us here today. I want to take an opportunity to welcome you to this amazing event. I'm so excited. I cannot wait. I almost didn't want to talk. I was like, I don't need to say anything. Let's just get into it. But I do want to take just a moment to share with you guys the network theme for this year, because I feel like it really fits into where we're going with this conversation. So our 2022 theme this year is called Push. And that is push with two U's, because y'all know we got to be different, right? And make an impact. So that stands for passion, utilization, urgency, show up, and humility. The message that I really want to get across to everybody for this time is that we need to, as an organization, as a family, rediscover our passion, right?
Hey, don't do this.
Create a sense
Because the
of
dog can
urgency
eat
of
your chocolate.
the work that we're doing. Utilize everything that we have at our disposal, all of our resources, all of our connections, everything that we have to our community, and show up, right? Show up to actually complete the mission, and then remember to stay humble for all deserve. So I really think that ties directly into everything that Dr. King stood for, taught us right in line with the theme for this event, I am the dream. I think that as first of this mighty organization, 52 years, going on 53 years strong, we're the first to do it, and we lay the groundwork, we set the tone. And so I think that if we focus on that and focus our energy on pushing, right, for our theme, we can keep Dr. King's words and spirit alive, and we can continue to be the dream. So thank you guys so much for letting me kind of preempt, bring in, and share with our theme. More to come as the network moves forward. I'm so happy that this is our first event. I'm ready to get started. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Mr. CPO. Thank you guys so much. Enjoy.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam CEO. We appreciate that message. We always love hearing from our leadership team, and it's always a great opportunity when we can rejuvenate and re-energize the theme and the message for the network. So 2022 is going to be a great year. All right. And now, everyone, we have a special message from our very own Corey Anthony, Senior Vice President and Chief Diversity and Development Officer here at AT&T Services.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be here with you all today. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to thank the network and my team for organizing this amazing event as we head into Martin Luther King Jr. Day weekend. I'm excited for what's in store. Every year, MLK Day provides an opportunity to reflect on the progress made towards achieving Dr. King's dream. It's a dream that one day every person, no matter their identity, would be treated fairly, equally, and have access to opportunity. Prior to Dr. King's assassination, he focused on his vision to create economic justice for all, to fight against racial inequities and the poverty that was impacting Black, Latino, and Asian American communities disproportionately. To recognize that work, this year we're going beyond more than a dream and using a holiday as a way to get re-energized on our purpose, because we can all play an important role in realizing Dr. King's dream. One way we are achieving this at AT&T is through our work to help bridge the digital divide, providing connectivity and digital literacy resources to underserved populations, including some of our nation's most vulnerable students and families. We know this type of access is critical to their education and economic futures. And I know you all have heard me say this, but I'll say it again. To get one step closer to achieving that dream, we must step outside our echo chambers to create understanding. This is the guiding principle for not only myself, but for the D&I work we do here at AT&T. Last month, I gathered with our employee group leaders for our first United EG Forum, where we talked about how we can break down barriers and eliminate biases. I ask that you keep those takeaways in mind while we remember Dr. King and the dream he had for an equal and just world. I'm excited and honored to introduce you all to our guest today, Stephon Ferguson. I want to share a little bit about Stephon. He was born in Albany, Georgia, and now currently resides in Fayetteville, North Carolina. He's a U.S. Army Sergeant. He studied at the Academy of Health Sciences in San Antonio, Texas, and pursued his passion in theater at Georgia State University. He also received his Master of Divinity at Morehouse School of Religion. And if that wasn't enough, in 2005, Stephon founded Leaders for Literacy, Inc. It's an initiative designed to get local leaders more involved in literacy efforts with our youth. Today, Stephon will take us through a Dr. King simulation. He'll use Dr. King's words to share responses, solutions, and answers from a nonviolence perspective. Dr. King's words are a necessary instruction in a world that expects a different reaction to today's social and civil injustices. What's extremely special about today's experience is that Stephon is the only speaker that is licensed by the King family to use his voice for Dr. King's words and speeches. During our time together today, I really encourage you to remember Dr. King's legacy and reflect on how you are carrying out his dream. I'll now kick it over to George Harrison, who's the network's Chief Program Officer. Thank you again and enjoy the program.
All right. Thank you very much to Corey Anthony and the entire Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion team. We appreciate that warm greeting, that message, and that welcome of introduction for Mr. Stephon Ferguson. Next, I'm thrilled to introduce our moderator for today's event, Jawanza Watt, AVP of Enterprise Billing Disputes. In his day job, Jawanza resolves enterprise billing disputes and streamlines dispute prevention efforts. He brings a wealth of knowledge and experience from previous roles in UVerse operations, supply chain, network operations, and several other organizations at AT&T. He enjoys public speaking, leadership training, golfing, and spending time with his wife and 3 sons. His mentoring philosophy is this: we can't solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. He's a beloved advisor to the network, a valued leader at AT&T, and one of my most supportive mentors. Ladies and gentlemen, Jawanza Watt. Jawanza, I'll hand it over to you, sir.
Thank you, George. Great to be here, and thanks for having me, and thanks for that introduction. Today, I'm really, really excited to host our guest speaker. It's a unique opportunity because we're doing something that a lot of us don't do regularly. Some of us do. We're talking to somebody in the spirit, okay? So Stephon Ferguson, in the spirit of King, Dr. King will join us, and we'll try to have a little bit of fun with it. Although this is a serious moment, and he will answer our questions in the voice of Dr. King. And I will say, every Martin Luther King holiday, we all ask ourselves, what if, right? What if Dr. King was here? What would he say about this? What would he say about that? And so today, we'll have an opportunity to actually get answers to those questions. So, Mr. Ferguson, in the spirit of Dr. King, I'm so happy to have you. Welcome.
Today. Thank you kindly for having me, and I'm honored and privileged to be here.
Awesome. So during your time, the struggle for civil rights was one of the most significant conflicts in our nation's history, and oftentimes conflicts of that magnitude involve violence. We're all curious, where did you get your nonviolent approach?
Well, I was first introduced to the concept of nonviolence when I read Henry David Thoreau's essay on civil disobedience. I was a student, I was a freshman at Morehouse College. And having grown up in Atlanta and witnessed segregation and racism every day, I was really fascinated by the ideal of refusing to cooperate with evil. And then, as I delved deeper into this philosophy in 1950, as a student at Crozer Theological Seminary, where I went after Morehouse College, I heard a talk by Dr. Mordecai Johnson. Now, Dr. Mordecai Johnson was the president of Howard University at the time. And Dr. Johnson had recently traveled to India, and he spoke on Gandhi. He talked about his works and his teachings, and I felt that it was the first person to transform Christian love into a powerful force for social change. And so Gandhi's stress on love and nonviolence gave me the method to social reform, one that I had really been seeking for a long time. And so while I was intellectually committed to nonviolence, I had not really experienced the power of nonviolent direct action firsthand. And that was until the start of the Montgomery bus boycott. Of course, that was in 1955. And during the boycott, when we enacted the Gandhian principles, we saw that they were steady in their work. And so I stood true to those principles, though my home was bombed, though there were many threats on my life and my family, and as well as, Chicago and different areas where we received much violence. But I began to understand how nonviolence could become a way of life, that it could be applicable in all situations. So it was really the guiding light of our movement. And I would always say that Christ furnished the spirit and the motivation, while Gandhi really furnished the method. And then in 1959, I decided to take a trip to India. So I took a trip over to India to get connected more intimately with Gandhi's legacy. And so with nonviolence, what I realized is that darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. And hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And so the beauty of nonviolence is that in its own way, in its own time, it really seeks to break down the chain of reaction to evil. So there was this philosophy of nonviolence that began with me there.
Very nice, very nice. Thank you for sharing that background. I don't think that many people know about that trip to India that you took and the impact that it had on you and on our country to that end. But what people do know about is your famous speech, or it's become famous in case you didn't know, in 1963, where you shared a great vision for our country's future, the "I Have a Dream" speech. In fact, this weekend, all across our country, uh, up and coming orators will be quoting that speech in various contests in various churches around our country. It's infamous in our country's legacy. I'm curious from you, when you think about our nation today, do you feel like that dream that you expressed to all of us in 1963 has become a reality in 2022?
Well, certainly we have come a long, long way since that time. We have made much progress, significant progress, in the area of race relations. Now, I delivered that speech in 1963. Now, we recall that 1963 was the same year that I wrote a letter from the Birmingham jail. It was the same year that, in fact, 3 weeks after the March on Washington, when I delivered that speech, four beautiful, darling girls were killed in the 16th Street Baptist Church there in Birmingham. Also in 1963, President John F. Kennedy, our president, who was really supporting and pushing the Civil Rights Bill, was assassinated. And so 1963 was an extremely pivotal year during the civil rights movement, but we really did a lot on the sense of nonviolence to make a difference in people's lives. So we have certainly come a long, long way. Now, if I stop right there, that we have come a long way, I would leave you the victims of an illusion wrapped in superficiality. I would leave you the victims of a dangerous optimism. In fact, if I really stop right there, I would be telling a fact, merely stating a fact, but not telling the truth. You see, a fact is merely the absence of contention, but truth is the presence of coherence. Truth is the relatedness of facts. So not only must I tell the fact that we have come a long, long way, I must go on to say that we still have a long, long way to go. Now, if we look down through history in the United States of America, we can see the different periods of history as it relates to race relations. But one thing that we notice, and in each of these periods, it took a decision by the Supreme Court of our nation to really give constitutional validity to the dominant thought pattern of that particular period. When we look today at the murdering of Mr. George Floyd, Mr. Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor by police officers, these unarmed Black men and women, and we see the hatred and the division that is plaguing our nation, we can clearly see that the dream has yet to become a reality. But I'm very optimistic. America is essentially a dream. It is a dream of a land where men of all races, of all nationalities, and of all creeds can live together as brothers and sisters. Now, the substance of this dream is expressed in these profound words. We hold these truths to be self evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And one of the amazing things that we notice about this dream is its amazing universalism. Now, it does not say some men, but it says all men. It doesn't say all white men, but it says all men, which includes Black men. It doesn't say all Protestants, but it says all men, which includes Catholics. It doesn't say all Gentiles, but it says all men, which includes Jews. And one of the other things that we notice about this dream is that unlike other totalitarian systems, it says that there are certain basic rights that are neither conferred by nor derived from the state. And in order to discover where they came from, we must move down behind the dim mist of eternity. They are God given. Very seldom, if ever, in the history of the world has a socio-political document expressed in such profound, eloquent, and unequivocal language the dignity and the worth of human personality. For the American dream reminds us that every man and every woman is the heir of a legacy of dignity. But yet, ever since the founding fathers of our nation dreamed this dream, America has been, to use big words as the psychologists and the psychiatrists use, a schizophrenic personality, classically divided. On one hand, she has proudly professed the noble principles of democracy, and on the other hand, she has sadly practiced the very opposite of those principles. Slavery and segregation were always strange paradoxes in a nation founded on the principle that all men and all women are created equal. We are the dream.
Excellent, thank you. And speaking of that equality, one of the big successes during your time was in 1965 when you witnessed the signing of the Voters' Rights Act. Speaking of constitutional validity, that particular act banned racial discrimination in voting practices, enabling African Americans, or Black folks as we call them today, to have voting rights that they hadn't had prior to that. Because of the act, voter rights and voter registration increased significantly. Question, has that act held fast? Is there more still to do today?
Well, that act has not really stood fast. It has in some instances, but as we know, it was just a few years ago that they removed the pre-clearance clause, which was a part of that act. They said that we didn't have any need for it, but the need is still there. So absolutely, there's much more that must be done. When we look down at the history of voting rights, we recall Bloody Sunday. Many of you may, I'm sure, are familiar with Bloody Sunday. It was March the 7th, 1965. About 600 men and women started out on a mighty march from Selma to Montgomery. And it was led by Mr. Hosea Williams and Mr. John Lewis. And they were beaten, they were tear gassed, many received life-threatening injuries. And it was just 5 months after that. We finally marched on the third try, but it was 5 months after that in August that the Voting Rights Act was signed into law. So we know all of the manipulative practices that have been used to keep Blacks from registering to vote and voting. I know just in North Carolina right now, they're on their third try to redesign the lines for the mapping for, there's a lot of gerrymandering going on. So it's still existing today. And so, no, yes, we have come a long way, and that was very significant. But because of where we are today, we certainly have much more to do. And one of the first things that we need to do is to pass this John Lewis voting rights bill, which is on the desk of the president right now. We need to pass that, and we need to do all that we can do to make justice a reality for all of God's children. So, people used to say, well, time will work this problem out. People used to tell me that all the time. They would say, well, Dr. King, time will work this problem out. Pray about it, don't push things. But these people really fail to realize that time is neutral and that time can be used constructively or destructively. And the problem is people of ill will have used time much more effectively than people of goodwill. And I believe that we may have to repent, not only for the blatant vitriolic words of the bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people. Human progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals. And without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally to the primitive forces of social stagnation. Time will not work this problem out. It's going to take all of us collectively to make a difference. So, to answer your question, no, we have not arrived. We still have much work to do, but I'm very optimistic that we will get it done.
Well, we all consider you one of the epitome of those that have stood steadfast in the fight for justice. In fact, you mentioned John Lewis. The two of you really gave a lot. Both of you survived Bloody Sunday. And by the way, give him our regards. We all have much love for him also when you do talk to him. In the 50s and 60s, you gave your all. You really put it all on the line, and it cost you personally. You were jailed, beaten, stabbed, and ultimately killed. When you look at America today, were these sacrifices worth it?
Absolutely, absolutely. They were worth it. As I said in Memphis, Tennessee, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I wasn't concerned about that then. I just wanted to do God's will. And He allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I looked over and I saw the promised land. And I told the people that night, I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I was happy. I wasn't worried about anything. Mine eyes had seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. And I've always said that if a man has not discovered something that he will die for, he really isn't fit to live. I've always based my beliefs, my thinking, my philosophy, my religiosity on the foundation of Jesus Christ. And I've always used that as a basis. And Jesus went into the temple one day, and he went back to Isaiah and he quoted from him. And he said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, the recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, and to preach the acceptable year of the Lord." These are the guidelines, and this is what I have always used. But also with that, he told me that every now and then I'm going to have to suffer. Every now and then I'm going to have to deal with some issues for the freedom of my people. And I was willing to even die if necessary. And I had developed really this inner conviction that there are some things so dear, some things so precious, some things so eternally true that they're worth dying for. You know, I said then, if a man happens to be 38 years old as I happen to be, and some great opportunity stands before the door of his life, some great opportunity to stand up for that which is right, some great opportunity to stand up for that which is just. But he's afraid that his home will get bombed, or he's afraid that he will get beat down or shot by state troopers. He may go on to live until he's 80, but he's just as dead at 36 as he would be at 80, as the cessation of breathing in his life is merely the belated announcement of an earlier death of the spirit. He dies. A man dies when he refuses to stand up for that which is right. But we stood up against the police dogs. We stood up against the fire hoses. We stood up against the tear gas. We stood up really against anything that they could muster up, letting the world know that we were determined to be free. And so all of these great sacrifices by so many people, it certainly was worth it as we continued the struggle.
In standing up and standing up for opportunity and standing up and being willing to speak to authority, you spoke boldly truth to power with both presidents and world leaders about their actions, and even more so about their inactions as it pertains to civil rights. How did you do that so skillfully? What advice do you have for those of us who want to speak truth to power today?
Well, thank you for those kind words. We all have the ability to stand up for that which is right. And I attribute much of my work to my deep family roots in the African American Baptist Church, my past personal experiences right there in my hometown of Atlanta, my theological studies, and I was really blessed to have an extensive network of contacts in the peace and the social justice movement. So God had given me the ability to really do that. But what it really comes down to is us collectively. That's why it's important that we unite, that we have a much stronger voice collectively. And if you think about it, your voice, your vote is your voice. Your actions is your voice. The power that you have. You see, they have power in the system, but when you vote, you're speaking truth to that power. When you march, you're speaking truth to power. And I knew in 1960, as Miss John Lewis and all those were sitting in, I knew as they were sitting in that they were really standing up for the greatest in the American dream and taking the whole nation back to the great wells of democracy, which were dug deep by the founding fathers in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. So it's that collective effort of being one voice, and that really is speaking truth to power. Think about the bus boycott. Now, Mrs. Rosa Parks refused. She decided she wasn't going to take it any longer. She stayed on the bus seat. I was catapulted into the position of the president of the Montgomery Improvement Association. And we had a part to do with it. But it was really the 50,000 Black men and women of Montgomery, Alabama, who refused absolutely to ride the city buses and walk together for 381 days. And that is what caused the Supreme Court of our nation to render the decision that segregation in interstate travel and segregation in public transportation was unconstitutional. So it's the unity piece. And whenever Pharaoh wanted to prolong the period of slavery in Egypt, he had a favorite formula for doing it. And what was that? He kept the slaves fighting among themselves. But what happened when the slaves got together? When the slaves got together, something happened in Pharaoh's court. And he could not hold the slaves in slavery. When the slaves got together, that was the beginning of getting out of slavery. And so when we do these things, when we make these acts, when we stand up, when we march, when we speak out, we're really speaking truth to power.
I want to drill down on that just a little bit more, Dr. King. In the spirit of speaking truth to power and standing up when there's opportunity, There seems to be a lot of opportunities for that today. There are many extremist views that have resurrected themselves. And really, there are many folks, not just Black folks, that have various oppressions to stand up for. However, sometimes when we do that, it escalates into violence. In your day, obviously, you believed in peaceful protest, as you mentioned earlier. How can that approach be taken today, especially if it could be seen as a sign of weakness?
Well, that approach certainly can work today. I'm very optimistic in the same way that it was taken during the civil rights movement in the 50s and in the 60s. And I still believe that the method of violence, nonviolence, will work. I know it will work if we would just use it. Now, you see, hate and evil and violence are very powerful. And this is what we're fighting against. And to put it biblically, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against spiritual wickedness in dark places. This is what we're wrestling against, not the person. And the only thing that is powerful enough to root out hate is love. And at the root of nonviolence is love. But I think it's very necessary that we understand what love really is, because when we hear this word love, we always think about it in a sentimental way. But people used to ask me about it all the time, and they would say, "Now, Dr. King, what in the world you mean when you say love these people who are beating on us and bombing our homes and threatening our children? What in the world you mean when you say love these people?" And I always have to stop, try to define the meaning of love in this era. And interestingly enough, Greek philosophy comes to our aid at this point. There are three words in the Greek language for love. Now, one of them is the word eros. Eros is a sort of aesthetic love. Philosopher Plato talks about it a great deal in his dialogues. It's a yearning of the soul for the realm of divine. And so it has come to us to mean a sort of romantic love. So we all know about Eros. We've experienced it. We've read about it in the beauties of literature. In a sense, Edgar Allan Poe was talking about Eros when he talked about his beautiful Annabel Lee with the love surrounded by the halo of eternity. In a sense, Shakespeare was talking about Eros when he said, "Love is not love which alters when alteration forms or bends with the remover to remove. It is an ever fixed mark which looks on tempest and is never shaken. It is a star to every wandering bark." That's Eros. Then the Greek language talks about philia. Philia is another level of love. It's an intimate affection between personal friends. Now, on this level, we love because we are love. We love people that we like. This is friendship. But then the Greek language talks about agape. Agape is more than friendship. Agape is not something affectionate. Agape is an understanding, a creative, redemptive goodwill to all men. It's an overflowing love that seeks nothing in return. Theologians would say that it is a love of God operating in the human heart. And so when one rises to love on this level, he loves man not because he likes him, but he loves every man because God loves him and he was made in the image of God. So he rises to the level of hating the system rather than the individual who is caught up in that system. He loves the person, even though he may hate the evil deed. And Mr. Watt, I really believe this is what Jesus meant when he said, "Love your enemies." And I'm so happy that he didn't say, "Like your enemies," because it's really difficult to like some people. It's difficult to like people bombing your homes and threatening your children and kicking you about. But Jesus says to love them. Love is greater than like. Love is understanding, creative, redemptive goodwill to all men. So those, I believe, who view nonviolence as a weak method are not really aware of what nonviolence is, because it is the strong man, it's the strong woman who can stand up amidst opposition, who can stand up against violence being inflicted upon them and not retaliate with violence. It's the strong man and the strong women who can do this. So it takes strength to love. And so I would say this will still work today. It will. I believe we have left this method. It was really rooted in religiosity. It was really rooted in our spiritual Yes, it was the Black church that really gave way and made nonviolence an integral part of our struggle. Because I'm certain if this philosophy had not emerged, many streets would be flowing with blood and continuing to do so. But this is a great method, and I believe we need to really understand the concept. It's not a sterile passivity, but it's a powerful moral force which makes for social transformation. So certainly it will work today. It can work today. And I believe that if we begin to educate ourselves on the 6 key principles and the 6 methods, that we can really continue to make a difference in our nation.
Thank you. It's an honor, Mr. Ferguson, in the spirit of Dr. King. We appreciate you. We thank you. We thank you for your words. We thank you for your encouragement. And that last piece on agape and the relevance of nonviolence in today's society is much needed. What we're going to do, if you don't mind, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back to you. So what we all would love to do is hear some snippet from your speech in 1963. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a break. If you don't mind being on standby, and we'll come back to you. And I'm going to turn the program over to Nicole Slay, and then we'll look to hear back from you momentarily, Dr. King.
Great, wonderful.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much, Jawanza. I'm having to get myself together because it definitely sent chills through me and a lot of employees on this call. I'm getting so many good reviews. So many people have even already seen Mr. Ferguson. And so thank you so much, Mr. Ferguson, for your talent and just gracing us with your time today. And thank you so much, Jawanza, for being a great moderator and really getting that conversation going. And so like Jawanza stated, we have a special treat from Mr. Ferguson, but we're going to switch gears a little bit. Please try to stay to the end because there is a survey, and we definitely want to get your feedback to see how well we did. But right now, I want to talk to everyone as a follow-up about community engagement and supporting and loving on one another. And so AT&T actually currently has a community engagement campaign that has been running from January the 10th to the 31st. And there are several ways to get involved. So this year's call to action is volunteer, give, and act. And so, George, if you could drop that URL link so our attendees can visit the AT&T Community Engagement website. When you go there, there are several ways that you can volunteer. So join AT&T Believe and become a DECA mentor. You could do that by being a digital tutor, a digital mentor, as well as host your own digital workshops. So please go and sign up and utilize your time on January the 17th as a day on and not a day off. And like I said, the campaign goes for the whole month. So don't just focus on January 17th, but make it a plight to love and support yourself, others, and those in underserved communities throughout the rest of the year and continue forward. Give. There are several ways to give. So there are a plethora of nonprofit organizations on the AT&T website where you could give your monetary donations. And if you have a nonprofit that is near and dear to your heart and you don't see it on the list, feel free to add it and share with us the community service projects that your nonprofit has going on so that the AT&T community can be involved as well. So please give. And last but not least, most important is to act. So it's one thing to sign up for these volunteer opportunities. It's one thing to schedule and say, I'm going to give some monetary donations, but both of those have to be followed up with actionable items from yourself. So please get out there and act. Please win as one, as we know as an AT&T community is important, and just get out there and really show that you can be that impact and change that Mr. Ferguson spoke about in the spirit of Dr. King. Also, don't forget to log your volunteer hours so that you can get credit and just measure how much community service projects that you've done throughout the year. Last but not least, George, if you could share the King Center's link.
So I think it is too late to register for their Beloved Community Awards this weekend, but please bookmark the King Center and just throughout the year visit the King Center's website and see what type of virtual opportunities you can partake in. If you are in the Atlanta office, they do have some contactless opportunities that you can engage in this weekend and for the rest of the month, like donation drop-offs and things of that such. So I just encourage everyone to go out and be that change. And when you do, please use our network hashtag so that we can keep up with what you're doing and see how you're being a blessing to others. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Stephanie so she could talk about a network fundraising opportunity.
Thank you, Nicole, for giving me this opportunity to talk about our MLK fundraiser for the Network BICP. As a fundraising chair, it's actually my responsibility to provide you with opportunities to financially support the Network BICP programs and scholarships. These programs and scholarships allow us to continue the network's legacy of providing opportunities for the development of students in the STEM field, not only to spark in them an interest in the field, but to also spark a desire to continue their education. So to help us, our current fundraiser is selling of MLK t-shirts. The t-shirt is a celebration that embodies the MLK dream by proudly proclaiming, "I am the dream." Now we have a short sleeve shirt that comes in both a men and a women's version, which are $25, and a long sleeve version, which comes in a unisex, and that is $30. They'll be available for purchase through January 21st, and they'll be delivered around the second week of February. You see the links available, I believe, on the chat and also on the screen, and you can scan the QR code to access the store immediately. You are welcome to buy as many shirts as you would like for yourself and others. So thank you in advance for your support, and while you are purchasing your shirt, please welcome Joyce Henry.
Hello, everyone. And thank you so much, Stephanie. As you know, there will be a short question and answer after a special presentation by Mr. Ferguson / Dr. King. So can you please put your questions in the chat?
Thank you so much. Now we'll turn it back over to Ms. Joyce Henry.
We have a few questions that came from our audience, and I'm going to go with this first one since you've completed your speech. Can you elaborate on what the Promised Land looks like? Can you tell us what that looks like? It's given faith to me and so many others. Can you say whether or not it's close to
The Promised Land. I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. The Promised Land is really the future. If we look at it biblically, of course, the children of Israel were in Egypt, and they exited from Egypt, and they were on their way to the Promised Land. And the Promised Land was their freedom because they had been enslaved. And so the Promised Land looks like a nation where all of God's children treated fairly and equally, where we have a just system, where we have an equal level playing field, where all of God's children have an opportunity to be an American. That's what America is all about. That's what we were founded on. But for too many years, we have consistently and constantly had to fight for the freedoms that we already have. So yes, that is the beloved community. That is the future. That is how I see it from a perspective where all of God's children are treated fairly.
Thank you. And for our next question, of all of your speeches, which one do you feel was the most significant and impactful for the civil rights cause?
Is this Stephon or Dr. King? Yes.
Stephon.
Yes, ma'am. I would say certainly that that's very difficult to say. I would probably say the I Have a Dream part because it delves into every area. It goes into our Emancipation Proclamation. It goes into our documents of the country. It goes into the Bible. and it talks about blacks and whites and coming together and everything. So it kind of is very full. But another piece, another one I would say is very significant, and it's really not a speech. He actually wrote it, and it was a letter from the Birmingham jail. But he actually recorded it, so you can purchase that. I found a copy in the King Center. It's about an hour long, but he's actually reading the letter. So I would say that I have a dream speech as far as a speech. As far as writing, I would probably say the letter from the Birmingham jail.
Thank you so much. I have one more question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Stephon?
Yes.
Well, this one's for Dr. King. Speak truth to power. Those in power must value the opinions of others. Yet the appetite for alternative views seems to be eroding at all levels of government. The attitude of either with me or against me is growing and blunting our ability to grow action, understanding, and connections with others. What do you suggest? What can we do to overcome this?
Well, I really believe that it is going to take the nonviolent piece. I believe it's going to take the structure, and to go into nonviolence would take a while, but it's really a method. It starts, and I said it in the letter from the Birmingham jail, that there are 4 basic steps: collection of the facts to determine whether injustice exists, negotiation, self-purification, and direct action. And so we went through all of those steps in the movement. And I can understand the contingent and the what people are really saying, because there is a lot of division going on. But I certainly believe that it would work today because we're still dealing with the same issues. But it's going to take a method of love and unity. It's going to take a method of understanding. You know, we do a study circles program, and one of the first things that we do is we talk about our values. And we list all the values. We have people from different backgrounds, black, white, different folks from different backgrounds, and we ask them about their values, which was said early in the question. But what we noticed is that we often share many of the same values. But what we focus on is what our differences. So we take the differences that we have, and we escalate those differences, and we never really deal with what we have in common. And if we get to it's kind of hard to hate somebody that you understand, even if you don't like them or like their ways. But if you understand them, that gives you another piece. So I really believe that we could do it by enacting this piece of nonviolence, coming together collectively, working to understand each other, because you really can gain a whole lot from diversity. I'm in Fayetteville, North Carolina right now, Fort Bragg, which is the largest military base in the world, and we are the most diverse community in the United States of America. But we tried to take that diversity and use it as a tool to grow, instead of using it as a tool. And as I said before, people of ill will have used time much more effectively than people of goodwill. So I think there's so many things, and we could continue on with that, but there's so many things that we can do. But I really believe the unity piece, the one voice, and coming together to make a difference is what it's all about.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ferguson. This has been a stirring event. I'd like to turn it over to George at this time.
All right. Thank you so much. Well, everyone, my. All I can say is what a moving message of hope, encouragement, and community. We hope that you enjoyed today's event. Please be sure to complete the brief survey that we shared with you to share your feedback. At this time, we would like to take some time to thank some very special people and some very special teams who helped to bring this event together. We would like to thank Corey Anthony and the entire team in diversity, equity, inclusion for all of their continued support and dedication over these many years. especially our diversity liaison, Minerva Mitchell, who was instrumental in helping to put this event together. We also would like to thank corporate communications team for supporting and promoting our event. Excellent job putting it on AT&T Insider. Hopefully you all saw it there. There are some great things that the Insider has to share, and we appreciate the corporate comm team for that. We also want to thank Jawanza Watt, our moderator extraordinaire. Once again, you've proven how much of a supporter and a friend you are to the network. We can't thank you enough. We appreciate your time and energy that you always bring to the network. We also want to thank Madam CEO, Gina McCrae, Madam COO, Chief Operations Officer, DeWanda Ricks, our fundraising chair, Stephanie Johnson, the entire network communications team, and all of our national board members and officers, as well as all of our local chapters and leaders and members. Without you all, without the members and all the chapters, we wouldn't be able to make this possible. Thank you to our entire Chief Program Officer Planning Committee, Derek Avery, Ayub Munyinye, and our co-chairs for today's event, Nicole Caldwell-Slay and Joyce Henry. We also want to thank Ms. Hilda Willis, producer, director, and manager for Mr. Stephon Ferguson. And last but most certainly not least, the network and AT&T would like to extend a warm and sincere thank you to Mr. Stephon Ferguson. You have truly inspired us today and marking Dr. King's birthday as a day on and not a day off. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for sharing the words of Dr. King with us, Mr. Ferguson. We appreciate it.
Thank you certainly for having me, and thank you to each and everyone who made this possible. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you again.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, that is the end of our program today. Thank you, everyone. Please remember to submit your feedback in our survey. Please remember to go out and buy your shirt. The sale has been relaunched. The campaign is relaunched. You have until January 21st to purchase your shirt, so be sure to go out and grab that. Grab a few extras for gifts. I'm sure as soon as folks see your shirt, they're going to want one for themselves. With that, we'll wish everyone a wonderful day. Please enjoy your MLK holiday weekend safely. Go out and do something for the community, whether it's locally or virtually online, nationwide. There are plenty of opportunities. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and everyone enjoy your day. Thank you so much.